No, I didn't have headphones.
See, I had headphones, and that
I
probably
believed in
explains
big
why.
speakers and loud volume.
Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
So my guest today is Cathy Faulkner, and this is going to be hard on me because this is someone who is a radio personality who's interviewed lots of people, and I'm a hack. So Cathy, welcome. Thank you for making this happen.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
Before I hit record, you started telling me this story, and I think I'd like to start there.
Oh, uh-oh.
Internship.
That's when I shared the dirt before you hit record.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The internship. How?
Yeah.
Okay, at the time of recording in 2021, what you're about to share seems completely impossible. But back in the day, KISW, how did you open the doors to KISW?
Well, for people who, I guess, don't know me, I worked at KISW for close to 20 years, right?
And who are you?
Yeah, they don't know me. Who are you, and what do you know? No, that's all right. I started at KISW as an intern. It actually was started as an assignment in my English class in 9th grade, where I had to interview somebody in media, and KISW was breaking down barriers for FM radio and breaking bands like AC/DC and Iron Maiden and the Scorpions, and I just had to be part of it. So I interviewed Steve Slayton, and then continued to communicate or call and make requests when I was babysitting instead of babysitting. And then like 6 months later, I applied for an internship through a school program through my high school, and got in the door. And that's how my career at the radio station started. With internships at special places, if you leave, the door closes on your way out because you haven't proven yourself. So I made it very clear to everybody that I wasn't going to go anywhere until, I wasn't going to go anywhere. And I did. I just stayed right there.
All right. I promised you I wasn't going to ask you really specific questions, but I'm going to ask this one and see if you can remember.
Sure.
So what requests were you making when you're babysitting? What bands did you want them to play? A
lot. It was Scorpions and AC/DC, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden. Yeah.
Okay.
Queensryche, because they just came out with their EP.
Right.
No, actually they hadn't yet. No, it was still that. And then I was big into Pat Benatar because there were very few rock vocalists that were making it big at the time. And they were certainly one of KISW's rising stars. So, the heavy hitters, the stuff that had loud volume that my mom kept yelling.
Turn that down.
Turn that down.
Yeah.
I got in the door.
I got around that in the house growing up because I had headphones.
No, I didn't have headphones.
See, I had headphones, and that probably explains
big speakers and loud volume.
Oh, absolutely. But my mother, no, she would not. She may be listening to this, so I've got to be careful. But Mom, love you, but you wouldn't like my music.
Love you, Mom.
So you started as an intern. What did they have you doing?
Real simple stuff. Answering the phones. I worked at night with Steve Slayton, so that's how I started the whole, night clock that I still live to this day. But I didn't have my driver's license, so either my mom or my dad would drop me off at the station, which was the uncoolest thing in the whole wide world. When Gary Crow was working afternoons, and he'd go over the PA system. Hello everybody, go wave to Cathy's mom who's dropping her off. So I was
That's
mortified.
Awesome.
But as far as tasks, a lot of it was answering phones, going to Dags and getting Steve dinner, going upstairs to the music vault, which was a site that anybody would drool over, just the vinyl and the depth and the breadth of titles that were up there. And slowly but surely over the years, I progressed up the ranks in the music department. Music director's assistant, started working with the labels, started working with the local promoters and clubs. Listened to a lot of the quantity of music that record labels send a radio station to determine the fly or die factor is just absolutely stunning. So I would join Steve in listening to a lot of records and, picking the hits or picking the tracks or, putting it in the what do we call it? The recycle bin was just actually a round garbage can or frisbees. We would have frisbee contests for those that didn't quite make it. So, and then of course Slayton was doing Disco Destruction at the time. There was the little disco section that was in the music vault as well. That really confused people.
that leads me to a question. I got to ask this one.
Sure.
So you got to pick, fly or die.
Yeah.
Did you ever pick for someone to not make it that actually turned out making it?
Probably. I mean, just in the law of averages,
sure.
Probably. And then there's a lot of bands that we had. Well, I guess I didn't pick them, but I guess one example is in the list of KISW Rising Stars. There's the Fabulous Poodles, and you don't hear a lot about them today. So that might be an example. But
okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's bands that made it. There's bands that didn't. There's bands that were very unique to the Northwest that didn't do well in other areas. Being a border town to Canada, we had incredible success, obviously, with, bands that you would say that would be a no-brainer, certainly like Rush and Bryan Adams in the early days, and just many of the bands that come from across the border that didn't do well in other parts of the country. So KISW was always very specific to the philosophy of a party looking for a place to happen, that we were fans of music just as much as our listeners are or were. And that combination is more of, we're bringing something to throw on the turntable for you to check out, as opposed to saying, you're going to like it. Right. And I'm going to play it till you do.
Well, I know that KISW was certainly the soundtrack of my high school years. And back then, you didn't have the ability to stream it. Like I could listen to anything I want right now from wherever I might be. So I, went away to college, and KISW didn't follow me over the mountains.
And it's very different. A lot of radio stations in other parts of the country are very different than when you grew up with.
Oh, absolutely. One question I have is, how involved were you with like the Rising Stars, the Rising Stars, those dollar shows that you guys were sponsoring?
I got in later. I became music director in September of 1991. And then I looked at the memo, and it was actually the day that Nevermind came out. I was assistant music director before that and metal director. So I could help in many instances with opening acts or make suggestions, but it wasn't until, the first one that I remember being actively involved with was in 1988. And it was a powerhouse. It was a team effort from the whole station. Jane's Addiction, Soundgarden, and Mother Love Bone at the Paramount.
Wow. Yeah. And how much were tickets for that?
Oh God, I think they were like $8, maybe $7, something like that. They started as $1 in the 70s.
And I have ticket stubs for $1. Yeah,
and then towards the end of the Rising Star campaign, I think they were like $9.99, which still is stunning when you think about the ticket prices nowadays.
I still talk about there's a group of friends, musicians that I've known through the years, and we still talk about the Angel City show. That was
legendary.
Yeah. And we still talk about, and we didn't know each other at the time. It wasn't like we all sat together. It was like, we didn't know each other. And I think I was in the balcony with my feet hanging over the rails.
It's so funny that you mentioned that one, because I've been working with Daryl Westmoreland, who's a photographer extraordinaire in the Northwest. And I think his first photo shoot was with Capitol Records for Heart signing their record deal. And so he's taken pictures of virtually everything. He found some pictures from that Rising Star show, and
really,
yeah, the fashion statements alone are just precious. But there's two reasons why Angel City was a rising star. One, obviously, Slayton had an absolute passion for AC/DC, and so our focus on Australia. This was before I started working there, but the focus on Australia definitely went from there. And Slayton is credited for breaking AC/DC in the United States. Which
really,
yeah, he was at Fred Meyer Music Market and found Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap in the import record bin. Back when Fred Meyer had that it was an import row and it had a big red sticker on it. Anyway, he found Dirty Deeds and he started playing it. And the Atlantic rep was like, what is that? What are you doing? And what is going on? And a call from the rep in New York and Atlantic started distributing AC/DC statewide because of the demand for AC/DC. Because it wasn't distributed in the States yet. It was still import only.
I have that. I still have that import of that one somewhere.
Dirty Deeds. Pretty amazing.
Well, that leads to a question, because when I think of radio stations now, I think of them as being super scripted. We got a playlist. We're going to play X 3 times, not the band X, but
right.
We're going to play X every hour at 10 minutes after, blah, 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 blah. Was KISW back in the day kind of, were you guys allowed to play whatever you wanted? Did you have creative latitude?
We had creative latitude, and how do I answer this? Starting as an intern, you don't have a lot of latitude.
Okay. Well, I understand that.
So when I first went on air, I was told what to do, and then I learned how to push the envelope like everybody else did.
Sure.
I think with technology and with that data microscope of analysis, trying to get certain demographics, I think everything from your phone onto what you stream onto what you listen to is analyzed more ways than you could even imagine. And in the analog days of radio, there was a little bit of element to that, but certainly not to the extent that we or the artists are experiencing now. We had the first studio that I worked in at KISW had a box of cards, and each card had a song title, and you're supposed to physically write in when you play it. And the crap kind of started clustering in the front because we'd start digging deeper to find the ones we want. And it just happened to be in the front. Sure. No, but and then there were different categories. So it was a primitive version of what many software programs do.
Right. Just because like you've mentioned, you guys, Slayton broke AC/DC into the U.S. market, if you will. That doesn't seem likely nowadays.
I think it is. It's just in a different vein, and it takes a lot more to get noticed. I think it's now in the vein of viral videos or something goes viral, or a concert performance blows somebody away and they put a video up. And the method may be different, but the passion for music, I think, is the same. The one thing that I think is a lost art is the art of the DJ, or the art of the personality. We just celebrated, I think it was last week, the 40th anniversary of MTV. And think from 40 years ago, think about how influential those first round of VJs were with the music videos that they played. And the personalities at KISW and many of the radio stations in the Seattle area were all powerhouses with passion for the music that they represented, and had the ability to feel like you were in the living room with them and you guys were sharing, we were all sharing songs together.
Right.
That's hard to accomplish when you have this technological screen.
My Spotify playlist.
Yeah, you definitely have a one-on-one relationship, but it doesn't seem to me, it seems to be missing a little bit on the connection. Okay. Either we haven't mastered how to make that connection better or stronger, but I mean, it's certainly my opinion. I'm sure my son would completely disagree with what I just said.
Well, okay. How long was it before they? This is a very specific question, so and I think you're probably going to be able to answer it.
I hope so. Specific dates. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago. I've got some jumbled memories, my dear.
I understand. We all do.
Yes.
Your first time on the air, your own show. Did you fill in for somebody or when?
I did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't remember the year.
Okay.
But I know it was before I graduated from high school, which was 84.
Okay.
And I got a call at 2 a.m. at the house. Had my driver's license by then, so I could drive myself, thank God. But I had to get my parents' permission because you can't just walk out of the house at 2 o'clock in the morning. But there was somebody that was ill or didn't show up for their shift or whatever. So I did a 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. a radio shift. And I recall when I got to sit down and go through the show, because we would make these cassette air checks of our shows. Bo Phillips, who was the program director at the time, just said how my nerves take my voice up an octave and make me sound like a child. And so the best way to practice your normal range of your voice is to just not sleep. If don't start fresh with your shift, think of it as the end of the day, so that you don't get all keyed up and amped up from the fact that you're on this 100,000 watt radio station that you've been dreaming of working at your whole life. You're so exhausted, like, just get me through this 4 hours and we'll be good.
First off, you were a high school kid.
Yeah, and a fan of the station.
Yeah, the fact I would expect your voice to be up an octave or more, and I would expect you to be brimming with enthusiasm and terrified at the same time. I know that if I were presented with that opportunity, I don't know that I could function.
Well, and today you would never get me to listen to that tape. I still have it, and I can't.
You still have the tape?
I cannot put it in. No, I can't listen to it. No, I can't.
All right. So you filled in. You got. So part of this that you just shared, though, that isn't realistic today, is that you got a call at 2 a.m., which would have been on the house phone. Right. Which would have been ringing, and mom and dad probably
without a cell phone. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Nowadays, your cell phone would buzz, and you get a text saying, "Hey, show up in 3 minutes." And you're like, "Okay, off we go."
No, it was the house landline, so it rang in dad's room, mom and dad's room, and my room.
So what did mom and dad say? I mean, obviously they said yes, but what?
Yeah, my folks they were always very supportive of my desire for working at KISW or being in radio. I don't know that they necessarily understood why. And I do recall a particular day, and I think it was when I got full-time, because I was still in college, and I got full-time on air, and my mom cried, and literally, I swear to God, she said, "We lost our daughter to rock and roll." I think she was hoping for like some big, monetary career that I could get from my UW degree, but no.
No.
Radio was
it. Probably had a lot more fun than you would have had with a degree. And
yeah.
Okay, so you went full time when you were still in college.
Yep. 1986, 1987 was when many. Almost half of the radio personalities at KISW jumped ship and started a radio station called KXRX, or the X. And as traumatic as that is, that's opportunity for somebody that's just starting out. And several of us who had been working weekends, because slots at KISW do not come up very often. But it gave me an opportunity. I got the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. air shift.
And that's how you become the late Cathy Faulkner.
Yes. And notoriously, I know I'll mention Slayton a lot, but Slayton is responsible for nicknaming virtually every nickname that went with a personality at KISW. He gave me the late Cathy Faulkner. It was an homage to Late Night with David Letterman.
Okay.
But with that, and as the years have gone on, the confusion as to whether or not I am actually alive or dead. And if sympathy flowers ever arrived to the station, I got them. I just had to remove the sympathy tag and just say I got them from an admirer, but they were.
So you always had flowers on your desk. I mean,
I had quite a few flowers on my desk that were from somebody who was afraid that, saddened by my demise that has not yet happened.
Okay. So this was the 80s, and we're going to move our way towards the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look online, I see lots of photos of you with lots of people.
And lots of people from Seattle.
A staggering list of who's who in rock and roll, not just from Seattle, but globally. Is there somebody that you would have loved to have a photograph with that you never got the chance to?
Yes. Pete Townsend. I would have liked to have my eyes open when I had my picture taken with Peter Gabriel. I looked like I was a sleeper. Anyway, Pete Townsend's definitely one. And oddly, there is a band that's very near and dear to my heart from Seattle, the Satchel and Brad, and specifically Sean Smith. And for all the times that I saw him live, and for all the times that I supported their records, I never got a picture with Sean Smith. And his vocals, may he rest in peace, his vocals have always meant so much to me, his talent. So that's one gentleman I would have loved to have my picture taken with.
When did you start being introduced to the bands? I mean, were you as an intern? Did they show up in the
from the moment that I walked in the door? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Anybody that came to be on Slayton's show had to go through me. I answered the door, or I took them into the studio to record their, station IDs, or they'd say, "This is David Lee Roth, from Van Halen, and you're listening to KISW." Something you would say. So I interacted with them, or, can I get you a beer while they're doing their interview? Can I get some coffee? What would you like to drink?
Wait a second. Once again, labor laws. You couldn't do that today.
Analog times. If it's in the fridge and the artist wants it, I'm going to truck it from the kitchen to the artist. There's no problem.
Times were simpler then.
They were, definitely. So I got introduced to the artist as soon as I started interning there. Yeah, it's definitely one of the perks of the business. I started probably... even like 84, 85, 86, I was listening to music and giving suggestions. Queensryche was coming into Slayton's show very regularly. Heart, certainly. Allies, anybody from the local scene would come in. So Queensryche was probably the first band that I started working with regularly, because by 88, I was hosting Metal Shop on the weekends. And so I was working directly with Shadow and Gypsy Rose and Forced Entry and Metal Church and a lot of the 80s metal scene. And then being assistant music director, and as music evolved between the 80s to early 90s, we would get the cassette demos from anyone and everyone, and certainly with the rise of Sub Pop, they made it really easy. We would get all these 7 inches and the Sub Pop 200 where it's just all right there. So there was a direct flow from Sub Pop to KISW that we appreciate. And thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
So as I warned you before we hit record, and since I'm talking now, the guy's mowing the lawn, so this might be the part of it. I can't even
hear it now.
I unfortunately I can't,
and
I'm so maybe no one will hear it, and I'm just crazy. Well, let's shift gears. Let's go out of the 80s and let's just call it. I'll just call it, for lack of a better word, the grunge era. Which
that word, yes,
I know. You can correct me, but
Megan Jasper's chuckling now.
Okay. What memories, and this is a really broad question, but what memories do you have of Seattle's music scene when bands like, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, and all that were starting, before they might have been, these household words? Because you shared a story with me when we talked on the phone the other day, and maybe we'll get to it, but yeah, what was it like for you? You're in the radio business, you're meeting people all the time, and this seismic shift in our local music scene happened.
Well, I remember, I remember being young and not having the confidence and arrogance that I certainly have today. And I remember how challenging it was to keep track of who was in what band. There's this Seattle band map, and everybody helped everybody. So I would see a band play and I would see a different guitarist. Well, did they lead? Are they subbing? Are they there? Are they in two bands or they're in three bands? Oh, okay. Which bands? And, you track, Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament. You're going to go through a certain track, or, the list goes on and on. So part of it was trying to not misstep, and just out of respect for the music that I was enjoying and seeing live or hearing arrive, of who the musicians were. So that was my little self-confidence dialogue going on in my head while I was trying to maintain a cool exterior of representing 100,000 watt influential radio station, and what we can do to help the bands connect with an audience. So there was this whole dialogue that I shared with you that I never shared with anybody else. So there was part of that. And then as it went along, there's always been a genuine pride and excitement. There seemed to be an integrity that Seattle music scene always seemed to emulate. An organic musical authenticity. And then, jumping around a bit in my answer, but jumping ahead to celebrating KISW's 50th anniversary, when they interviewed Chris Novoselic, he wore his original KISW rock shirt. And so, with hindsight being 2020, hearing him talk about the music that shaped his life as a young adult, that you can't deny somehow influenced the music that he created with his musical cohorts, right? So there's a pride that there's this cycle of, we played music that influenced them. They took what they got from hard rock, from punk, from pop, from every different style of music, and amalgamated this with rain and clouds and coffee and beer and God knows what, and made some amazing music. And just, I could feel the excitement. The audiences were starting to grow at the clubs. They were starting to follow specific bands. Bands were grouping up and doing bigger shows. We were having bands open up for national acts, and then that got people talking on a regional or a national level. The pinnacle for me was that Rising Star show that I mentioned earlier with Jane's Addiction, Soundgarden, and Mother Love Bone. That was an energy in a room that I had never experienced before. You could cut the tension and excitement with a knife. It was very obvious that if the seats remained in the Paramount, they wouldn't stay bolted to the floor. That people were flying, and it was a passion that the Seattle music scene is so known for. We knew that what we had supported up to that point, everything was about to change. All the rock formulas that had been done and redone was going to be challenged by this music scene from Seattle. There was absolutely no question. It was being helped by other regions because Jane's Addiction wasn't from Seattle, but that style of music was certainly ready to bust wide open. And I'm so grateful to this day to be able to have been able to view it from the sidelines or even be part of it. I don't see anything that could ever match it, ever.
Okay. I did not go to that show, so I can't.
Yeah,
I can't speak
and I don't know if there's any audio or video of it. I haven't come across any, but
I guess I just would have assumed that KISW would have been recording something off the soundboard for these shows. I just made that assumption that
sometimes
somebody would have.
Sometimes we did. Not that night.
Not that night. Okay. And then maybe part of it's mystique.
Yeah, it's in the vault. Yeah, Scott, it's in the vault.
It's in the vault.
It just hasn't come out of the vault yet.
And I don't have the security clearance to know anymore. Well, when you were seeing bands, local bands in this time, venue-wise, what venues are you remembering? Because like I've mentioned to you, I think, we talked about Astor Park or the Hall of Fame.
Before you hit record, we were talking about how my goal was to get into Astor Park with a fake ID before I was 20.
21. But those venues, unfortunately, I think
there's so many that are gone that I miss terribly. All of the venues at one point in time had a special show in it. Certainly we frequented Rock Candy and the Off Ramp quite a lot. A lot of record release parties were at the Weathered Wall underneath the monorail. And then all the ones down in the Central. Jesus, the history of the Central.
We could do a whole show on that.
Oh, I know. That could be an entire podcast. Just just some of the stories of Susan and Kelly doing early, and Ken Dean's doing early shows at the Central, and just hoping that the fire marshal doesn't come because it's over capacity yet again. But interesting, the answer that I have to give is that a lot of those nights I was on the air. So many of those shows, I was suffering FOMO, where I loved being on the air so much, but I really had to be careful of how many nights I took off, or a lot of the clubs, when my air shift finally went to 7 to 10, when I took over Slayton's slot, it allowed me to see some of the headliners, but not some of the opening acts. And as a music director, I love seeing the opening acts just as much because they may be the headliners down the road. But, everybody at KISW was a very tight team, from, Mike Jones to Scott Vanderpool to John Ballard to Damon Stewart. And so if one of us went to the club, like if I sent them in my stead, we all understood each other's language. So when they would call me and let me know what they heard or what they saw or what songs stood out, I trusted them as if I was there myself.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So vicariously, you guys work together.
Yeah. Or they'd be really cruel and, call me from I remember I would get several calls from the pay phone of the Off Ramp. And I think, no. Well, yeah, probably. Yeah. Would you accept? Yeah. That in jail. But Temple of the Dog did a performance at the Off Ramp, and I heard some of it.
You heard some of it on the phone?
You gotta hear this. It's like, oh crap. Be there. I was at Pearl Jam's first show at the Off Ramp, but I was not at the Temple performance.
Oh my gosh. You heard them on the phone from a payphone. Yeah. That's hysterical. See, the young kids these days won't ever understand just how cool that is. Because they're like going, well, here, I know.
It's like any show now. You got their phone up in the, up in the air, and then the video ends up on their Facebook page. And I didn't go to the last Temple performance either because I couldn't afford the ticket. And the tickets went pretty fast. The Paramount show, I think it was in 2016. But with social media, I got to see the whole show.
Right.
Every song was on YouTube in one way, shape, or form. So it's a weird reality that you can ultimately see a show that you don't necessarily attend. We didn't have that.
We did not have that. No, I missed a lot of shows the years that I wanted to see. But I got to see a lot of shows. I mean, I look back at all the bands I got to see through the years. I'm no real complaints. I've got a couple that I would. There's a couple bands I'd still like to see if they ever came back to the West Coast. I would think about it.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard for me when you have a really amazing concert experience with a band. It's a struggle for me to decide whether to go and see them again and again and again. Certainly, I have a handful from the Seattle area that I would go see any opportunity I could. But
let me put you on the spot. Name a couple of those. Who would you go see a couple times?
Who would I from Seattle or just everybody?
Yeah, we'll start with Seattle. I mean, who would you want to see?
Well, I would love to see Mother Love Bone again. Okay. And I know that's physically not possible.
Not going to happen, right?
No. I would go to any Soundgarden show. I would go to any Nirvana show. I would go to any Alice show, anytime, anywhere. And I have traveled the great seas to see Pearl Jam as well. So, and Candlebox. I've seen Candlebox many times, and their shows are just as strong today as they were back in the early days. I think they're playing the Crocodile at the end of the year.
All the so to put you on the spot about Pearl Jam, and you said you've traveled the seas to see them.
Yeah.
Where is the most exotic place you saw Pearl Jam?
Verona, Italy.
So you were at that. I've seen some videos of that.
Yeah, it was when they opened up for U2 at the Zoo TV tour, and I was there to check out a couple other bands in Paris, and Pearl Jam just happened.
Life's so hard for you.
And just happened to be close by in Verona. So there was a group of radio programmers that were in Europe. We were checking out Quicksand and a couple other bands, but they were on the same label as U2. So we were technically U2's guest at the show. To see your friends that have been touring for months and you show up, hi, I'm here.
How you doing?
Yeah. So when shows were in really high demand, friends of the band would, it's time to backpack Europe so you can actually see from the side of the stage or see them after show. And we went to this after show deal at U2's compound after the show in Verona. And this is the exotic part. And the thing that's just so special to me to be able to witness is it was when Pearl Jam was too big or too small. They were still a small town band, but their following was too big and they hadn't found a way to occupy the huge stage, but they had enough following to be able to have a huge audience. And that tour with U2, I think, was pivotal for them to figure out how to make a huge stage like that either bigger than life or intimate. And if you think of some of like the home shows that they did at Safeco Field, they have a way to make the stage look intimate and look like back in the days when they played the clubs. That tour was pivotal. And the after show at U2's compound, Mike McCready was sitting next to Edge and Vedder was sitting next to Bono, and they were having these in-depth conversations and the mentoring that had to have been going on while all the radio programmers were in the game room watching supermodels play supermodel ping pong. All of these rock stars were sitting down and comparing notes. And I just sit there going, there's that over there and there's that over there. And this is going to be pivotal in how Pearl Jam goes forward. So that not only it was one of the furthest distances to see them, but it was a pivotal show for me to see that they may be able to figure out a way to do this.
In their evolution, if you will.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's a really cool story. I will share this one. It's completely, you brought up Bono.
Yeah.
So this, to set the stage. So a family in the neighborhood that I grew up in had 5 kids. The youngest was a year younger than me, and then the next youngest was a year older than me. So the 3 of us kind of knew each other, right? And then they had an older brother.
Okay.
And the older brother ended up being a pilot.
Oh.
And the story that I was told was that he ended up being a corporate pilot for Nordstrom. And Bono's wife had a clothing line that Nordstrom's was carrying.
Interesting.
And I guess he got to fly Bono around from event to event.
Nice.
And Bono, I guess, took an interest in him. And I think I heard the fact that he would sit in the co-pilot's chair, if you will, and, sitting in the cockpit talking and having this conversation. And one conversation led to another, and Bono found out that he had 3 kids. And so next trip, Bono leaves 3 U2. Remember the U2 iPods?
Yes.
Left 3 U2 iPods loaded with U2's entire catalog.
Awesome.
For the guy's kids. And the kids were like infants at that time.
Class act.
But just what a cool guy, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, here he is, this mega world famous icon, just talking to his pilot.
Yep.
Which sounds funny when you say talking to his pilot, but you get the idea, flying in a semi-private jet, and you will, I guess it was a completely private jet. It's just that you say that story, but you're shared that you saw Bono and Eddie Vedder sitting on a couch talking, and you assume that there's mentoring going on.
Oh yeah.
I completely think that was what was going on, because just my little story about this guy was that he took interest in people.
Yep.
So if he took interest in the pilot, yep. You have to imagine he took interest in this up and coming musician with amazing potential.
Yeah. And I think many of the artists, be they, national icons or local icons, they have a love of music, and they have a love of that musical connection. Dave Grohl hits a home run pretty much every week in connecting with a particular group or a particular time or a particular thing. And many of my memories in watching Pearl Jam have to go through the obligations of media, be it, the interviews or going on a national syndicated radio show to preview a new album, the pomp and circumstance that comes with being a signed artist. There was a night that they were going to be on Rockline, and it was right before Versus came out. So, and Versus sold 1 million the first week. So you can imagine the fever that was going on with Pearl Jam. And it was my job as the producer, or as the assistant producer, to get Eddie from the car into the chair in front of the interviewer. And by then Eddie could do what he wanted, and there was no hurrying him. But what I got to see that the interviewer didn't get to see is there was this kid outside that had a vinyl copy of 10 and some magazine articles, and he was like 8 years old. And Ed went up to this young man, and they sat down on the curb, and Ed opened his suitcase and showed him his composition books, because he would write in his composition books after every show, and they were exchanging these things. And I'm like looking at my watch going, okay, all right, we're getting close. Like 2 minutes, man, 2 minutes. And he's sitting on the curb and having this full conversation, completely being in the moment, completely being mindful with this child. And that was the only person in the world at that moment. And somehow, no help from me, he literally sat down as Steve Downes was introducing him. And I take absolutely no credit other than, go there. Because somehow he just finished just at the right time and got in. But all of us were, where is he? Jeff was sitting down for like 15 minutes. Ed's seat was empty in the studio. And just watching, and he does that outside Cubs games, and everywhere he goes, there are an infinite number of those special moments. And like Bono or I think that's the neat thing about artists that just go from that musical passion, and I don't think they're trying to make a difference in a person's life. They're just making that connection. And
who knows what that 8-year-old kid ended up doing?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I'd be.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe nothing, right? But on the other hand, maybe.
Well, and then there's video of Pearl Jam tried to do a free show at Gasworks Park that got canceled. Ed went anyway, because there were people from other parts of the country that drove, like from Eastern Washington, and we barely had cell phones. I think I had the Motorola brick phone at the time, but there certainly wasn't social media to tell everybody that it had been canceled. And so there was a good handful of people that were listening to music in their cars. And I remember being on air and I played Pearl Jam as if the show was going to happen, because I knew there'd be people in the parking lot wondering what the heck was going on. Ed was there.
Wow.
Sat down, visited with people, talked to them about advocacy and how to talk to your elected officials and convey what you want if you want a show like this to happen. And 6 months later, the free show happened at Magnuson Park.
Wow.
Yeah. Tons of those special moments, huh?
See, that's, and you just have to let those sink in a little bit. I'm going to completely throw you off the rails because you said something, and I have to know the answer to this. You mentioned that Chris Novoselic wore his original KISW t-shirt.
Yeah.
Do you know any other human that could fit in a t-shirt from that long ago? I mean, that's the question that's been rattling in my brain. I wrote it down. I warned you about this.
You're taking notes. I
mean, I can't.
I can't. No.
I can't.
No.
My gosh.
I can wear the new swag. No.
But the fact that he has, and the fact that he kept it, though, there's the fact that he has it.
It speaks volumes, and I know a lot of people that have their rock shirt. I have mine. I have the one that I bought at the Squire shop, the first one that I bought. And it doesn't even fit my son. He's now too big for it. Wow. A little weightlifting. He can't wear my small.
Well, let's keep talking about those Seattle bands.
Yeah.
What other interesting but yet a little bit off the radar things can you share with us that, like you mentioned that we had the rotating cast of members and all of that, and ultimately some of the bands settled down into
and they locked in,
lineups.
right?
Yeah.
I think the surreal element. I mean, there's two stages that we haven't covered. One is the label launching of what is considered the iconic standards of the Seattle music scene.
Okay.
So that would be Louder Than Love from Soundgarden. That would be, the major labels, because certainly Sub Pop gets credit for Soundgarden and Nirvana and Green River and Miami, and the list goes on and on and on. But it was the major label launches where they were trying to take this local scene and break it nationally or globally. As a radio station that actively supported the local music scene, we would get this music before it was released nationally or globally. And then in a competitive market, we were fighting over who could play it first. But one release in particular, which was the Temple of the Dog record, it was released around the same time that 10 was released. And then when 10 went multi-platinum, A&M reissued it and treated it as a national release. Well, we had played Say Hello to Heaven. We had played Hunger Strike. We had done the heavy rotation where, people want to hear Pushing Forward Back instead of Hunger Strike. And they released Say Hello to Heaven as a single a year and 3 months after we started playing it. And the difficult time is nationally, Seattle hadn't fully taken hold yet. It was well on its way. But to have KISW or local radio stations not supporting a local release didn't speak very well to Indiana and Kentucky and Florida and Georgia. So it was a interesting balancing act that I was continually faced with for bands that we helped break, then replaying them. Here's the new track,
right.
just to catch up the rest of the world. Here we are again, having to balance playing it for people who had heard it a million times, Right. So there was that stage. And then there was the absolute saturation stage where anybody that had a label was coming to Seattle and wanted to, because they had to have somebody from Seattle on their roster. Some labels didn't care and they would just sign the first one that they found. Some of them did, but didn't take time to get to know the artists. And it was a weird feeding frenzy to witness. The movie Hype accurately portrays it with the clear cutting of a forest. It really felt like the bands had gone from talented to commodities, and it was hard to see people being loved to death. So there's those two phases. As a program director and as a disc jockey in Seattle, I spent a lot of time talking to other radio regions, other radio programmers in other parts of the country, and telling them it is okay to play Man in the Box by Alice in Chains at other times except after midnight. I mean, you can play it in the afternoon and it's going to be okay and you'll be fine, and you're not signing in for anything satanic. It's okay. It doesn't have to be scary. It sounds different, I know, but it doesn't have to be scary. Your kids will like it.
Your kids will like it. Yes, that demographic that you're looking for will enjoy this.
Right.
Trust me.
Yeah.
Look at our market.
Yeah, I had a lot of those conversations in the early days. When Soundgarden came out with Jesus Christ Pose or Alice in Chains songs off of the debut, it was just it didn't sound familiar to something that would be easy to put on at all times of the day. So I dealt with a lot of those.
So how, in your opinion, this is an interesting question because this has nothing to do with Washington State. In fact, it's everything to do with every other state. How did the rest of the U.S., what was the chain of events that happened when you saw it? Because you saw it here. You saw the epicenter of this tsunami.
Well,
what was it like watching it as it dominoes fell throughout the U.S.?
Pride turned into wow, turned into holy shit, was kind of like, it's like it just keeps getting bigger. I think we didn't have social media well honed at that point in time. So I think the key factors are how astutely radio stations listen to their audience. I think in many parts of the country, the audience was ahead of the radio station. And I think the reason that KISW was always there early on, maybe not to the degree that many bands wanted, but we were there early on, was because we were listening. We had an ongoing relationship with our audience. So I think that was the key. The first holy shit moment for me was Fashion Week, 2.5 years after grunge was termed, and a mock version of Ed's brown Levi jacket was on a model on the runway going for like $800, and with the Doc Martens and the flannel shirt tied around her waist and the leggings underneath the long shorts. And I'm just like, oh my God. It has permeated culture in every way, shape, and form. And I know that Ed didn't spend $600 on his Levi jacket.
I can't imagine that he did.
But that was,
and I can't imagine that he does now.
Yeah, and that's when it became. It's like, wow, what is this? Is this a parody? Have we shifted the axis of music to a degree none of us even anticipated? That we're part of Fashion Week?
And the answer, in my opinion, is yes.
Exactly.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Because one of the things you said when we were talking on the phone was that and I'm kind of paraphrasing you. So if I get it wrong, you're going to speak up and say, no, Scott, that's not what I said. But basically you said that the Seattle scene is probably not been duplicated since. And you mentioned that, technology is maybe one of the big reasons why, because we can now hear
anything, anywhere, anytime. Yeah.
Yeah. We can hear somebody from Indianapolis or from, Gunnison, Colorado, wherever we can hear. If somebody's doing something cool, we're going to hear about them on YouTube or whatever.
Right. But a collective musical movement, I don't think has been duplicated or surpassed a regional movement. You can take a New York movement or an Atlanta movement or an LA movement or the Southern movement. But since Seattle, I challenge anyone to find one that bigger, badder, more recent. I can't think of one. And now it's old enough to be classic rock. So, wow.
We could have gone the whole show without saying that.
Sorry. I mean, I've done more interviews about the 90s in this last 5 years. And I wish I had taken notes. We surfed it. So much was happening and it was happening so fast. And every night there were 5 bands playing and every day I would have 10, 15, 20 demos coming in of bands that may or may not make it, or, I'm trying out this song, what do you think? And it didn't even occur to me to have a historian sitting next to me. No.
Well, no, I mean, boy, that's an interesting,
thank God for Charles Cross, man. He, between the Rocket and the books that he's written, he's our historian.
Yeah.
And the music reviews from Gene Stout and Patrick McDonald and,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I miss the Rocket.
Those archives.
Yeah. I miss the Rocket.
I do too.
This could go in so many different directions. I'm trying to figure out where I want to go. Well, do I want to keep asking more about the Seattle scene, or do I want to ask you more about KISW and some of the things that Yeah, I guess I'll go KISW. Whose idea was it to sponsor a hydroplane?
Oh, I think Bo Phillips gets credit for that. I walked into that. That was before my time.
Okay. Good answer.
But it's an example of the philosophy of the radio station that has influenced my life to this day. And that is, there are no rules. And why not? Why can't we? And I love that it's not just putting our logo on a boat, but we got more publicity when the boat didn't finish a race or blew up or flipped. Thank goodness all of our drivers were okay. But, I think it caught fire and we were wiping off the soot so that there were some shiny parts when it went down the Torchlight Parade because it was all soot covered. But it became the underdog, much like KISW was throughout the years. And we always tried to have fun and try and do things differently. And I think the hydro is a perfect example. And we would always have her at the Bite of Seattle, and we would ask listeners to sign her bottom. And then we would blame the listeners if it didn't go fast enough because there was too much ink on her butt to make her, hit that hydrofoil just right. So it was the perfect love relationship of.
What I remember of it was such an
amalgam of what made Seattle special.
Well, it was such a, I don't want to say bad boat, but it was such a unlikely.
No, they worked hard. It was a good boat.
I know.
Well, we just didn't have enough spare parts.
We didn't want it to win. If it would have won, it would have ruined it. It would have ruined it. And so we were rooting for it to blow up, if you will. And we were rooting for it to drop dead in the middle of the heat. And just because it was just this lovable loser, if you will. Think the Chicago Cubs, it was just this. And that was, but the fact to me, what I remember is that was what everybody embraced. It wasn't that we wanted it to be the winner.
It didn't matter.
It was our boat.
Yeah, it was our boat, and we were going to have fun. And we hoped that we remembered the day after we woke up the next day, because the log boom parties were
Yes.
The stuff that Legends,
pretty substantial,
right? The stuff that Legends were made of. And I remember, oh God, I want to say it was like 85, 86. Bo came up with this amazing idea. We got a mascot. We got one of those stupid inflatable gorillas, and he had a rock t-shirt made for this gorilla, and he put it on a raft on Lake Washington. And so every time the camera spun around to see if Miss Rock was still going, there would be this gorilla with a big ass t-shirt. It's like, and yes, we ran out of gas at the Bite of Seattle, and yes, the gorilla fell on one of our DJs. So we have this joke of, Bambi versus Godzilla kind of with the inflatable gorilla. I mean, that's the magic of radio. That's the magic of fun. That's how can you make an event bigger than life without having to have a bigger than life budget? And Bo Phillips was a master at that and taught all of us so well.
Well, see, and that's the thing I think back, and you guys did social media marketing
without social media.
I mean, you said the Squire Shop, right? I mean, oh my gosh. But how many thousands of KISW t-shirts did the Squire Shop peddle through the years? I mean, and
the rock stickers. The rock stickers with the little, coupons on the back. And
no, I mean, you guys did an amazing job of being relevant.
I was lucky to learn from the pros. The team that took that station to number one in, I believe it was 1978, and they got their picture in the Seattle Times. It was a big thing. They are an example of what radio can be capable of, if you have a passion and if you're willing to try.
So who was the owner of the station back then? Was it a local ownership group?
It was a local ownership group. Lester Smith of K. Smith Enterprises. I believe Frank Sinatra and Danny Kaye, the entertainers, were also investors. At a certain point in the early days, around when KISW started, we were co-owned with KJR.
Okay.
And I got the pleasure of meeting Lester Smith. I didn't get to meet Danny Kaye, and I didn't get to meet Frank Sinatra. That I came later. But
you came later than that. That seems like an odd ownership group for this ragtag band of crazies that KISW was. Yeah,
in the early days, and our logo, our first logo was real like late 60s, early 70s foofy, before that famous rock logo, which I think was designed by a Boeing employee, a Boeing engineer.
That would make perfect sense, wouldn't it, given Seattle? I mean, that's actually like perfect.
Yeah, and there are a small handful of radio logos nationally, and that rock logo is one of them. Yeah. Yep.
What do you miss?
I miss radio from the old days. Don't I sound like an old person just looking back going, wasn't it so great?
No, well, because I'm older than you. No, you don't sound like an old person.
What do I miss? I miss making great radio with my family. They were my family. They were not coworkers.
Right.
It was a lifestyle. It was not a job. It was a family, not coworkers. And you hope to have that once in your life. And I miss that. I'm grateful that most of my family, I'm still in contact to this day. So I only miss it to a point. I miss working with them.
Perfect. So some of the questions I always ask each episode, and we're going to ask these questions of you, but I'm going to ask you.
The first time I saw Soundgarden in concert, is that going to be one of them?
Yeah. What was the third chord that they played? No. No. So we're going to ask you each question, two parts. So back in the day when you were going out and seeing these bands after hours.
Yes.
Where did you go? Were you a Doghouse person? Did you go to Best Cafe?
Oh, for dining after the show was over?
Yeah.
Oh,
it was a quintessential Seattle spot.
2 places, Doghouse, or I think it was called Minnie's on First and Denny. It was a 24-hour. I think it was called Minnie's. It was in that triangle building at First and Denny. And if it was Pioneer Square show, came up and went there. If it was anywhere within the downtown corridor, it was the Doghouse. And many a KISW staff meeting and debrief took place at the Doghouse, because all roads lead to the Doghouse.
All roads lead to the Doghouse. So nowadays, where's a quintessential Seattle place for you now?
Oh, man.
So this is the 2-part question.
Ooh. Oh my, I am coming at a loss. Because my hut.
Well, we all get a.
Yeah. One, I go to sleep earlier than I did.
Okay.
So there's that.
Well, so where's it doesn't have to be after a show. Where's a great place to grab, say, lunch in Seattle for you nowadays?
So funny, because there's COVID.
I know.
Any place down. Oh, I know. Lowell's. I always go to Lowell's in Pike Place Market.
Okay.
That's our breakfast go-to. And no, we don't feed the seagulls.
Okay. Coffee fan?
Yes. Cafe Vita.
Cafe Vita. Okay. Were you a coffee fan back when espresso carts were an unusual sighting on the street? Remember back when monorail?
I was a coffee fan when you didn't know how long the coffee pot at KISW had been stewing.
You didn't care.
You didn't care.
Yeah,
no. It was a 24/7, 365 operation. So it was.
That pot probably never got washed out.
Oh God, it was that in the staff fridge. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't want to go there.
But so, the Diner Cup of Joe, going to the T-Mar in North Bend, Roslyn, the T-Mar Cafe with the cherry pie and a cup of Joe. Espresso took a little bit for me to get on board. And once I got on board, there was no going back. Yeah.
So espresso beverages, what's your preference?
Mostly mochas, because I love any excuse to have chocolate. And if I don't go a mocha, I go a cappuccino.
Okay. Magic question, magic wand. You can go see any band ever and at any venue. So first off, and it can be anywhere. I'm going to let you go. Where is there a band you want to see?
Oh, I can answer that question.
Okay.
Led Zeppelin Aqua Theater at Green Lake.
Ooh.
1969.
Where they rumored were playing so loud that it started to cause the structure to.
Those concrete steps have a few cracks in them. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so you'd go see Zeppelin. Did you ever see Zeppelin? Did you ever?
No, I came close. I had tickets to the Kingdom show in 77. And I told my mom that I was spending the night at a friend's house. And when I got to the friend's house to go to the show, the tickets were no longer in my coat pocket. Mom 1, Cathy 0.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant in so many ways, on so many levels.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
I was too young. I'm a parent now. I was too young. I had no business going, and kudos to her. But I'm still hoping to find those untorn tickets somewhere in their house, and I have not been successful yet. She probably threw them away, but boy, I would love to see this.
Oh my gosh. I never saw Zeppelin. I didn't appreciate them. I appreciate them more now, except I will, if I'm in a room where Stairway to Heaven is playing, I will leave the room or turn it off.
That's okay. I understand. There's so much more than that one song.
Oh yeah, no, but that one song. A couple years ago, though, we saw Robert Plant in Spokane.
Oh, yes.
And I've been kind of doing this. Will I get to see him? Maybe I should go see this, so for example, unfortunately, I saw Petty right before
Oh
that
yeah.
happened.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we went and saw Bob Seger in Spokane and John Mellencamp.
Yep.
And I was looking forward to all those shows. And Plant, I was just like, I should go see him. Not really looking forward to it.
But.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Have you ever seen Robert Plant?
Okay. Yeah. Multiple times. And I was going to say, remember, let's take that conversation full circle when I said how I was trying to maintain my cool demeanor while I was getting to do all these really cool things and meet all these really cool rock stars. There is one artist that I could not maintain composure in front of, and that I practiced what I was going to say because I was going to be the hot shit rock star person, right?
Right.
It was Robert Plant, and everything that I wanted to say to him all came out in one jumbled mess. And he looked at me and smiled in his majestic way and put his arm around me, and we got a picture. And I still am mortified that was about all that I said to Robert Plant the first time I met him. Yep.
The first time. So you've met him more than once?
Yeah, I didn't talk the second time. I wasn't going to try.
I was just curious if you remembered the.
Oh yeah. Nope.
So we saw him in Spokane in a venue that holds about 3,000 people. And I'm sorry I didn't see Led Zeppelin.
Oh, I am too. Yeah.
I just never wanted to see him. I probably could have gone to that Kingdom show. Didn't want to see him. You
could have gone to the Kingdom show and you didn't. I wanted to and I couldn't.
So there we have it.
I have this conversation with my son, how I experienced music. When you have a child, you want to impart all of those experiences and those shows, because I saw shows that he will not have the opportunity to see.
Right.
And instead, I give him music streaming subscriptions, because the one thing that I had to do as a young person is save up money to buy a record, or know somebody that had a record and I could go to their place and listen to it. And, the youngins generation nowadays have no bound, if they can afford a streaming service, they have no boundaries. I hope that those royalties go to the artists that he is listening to, but watching his breadth and depth of artists, and taking him to see Elton John, during the retirement tour, or seeing Queen, or having some live experiences, they have all stuck with him. So the live experience, I think, has not changed in power in creating a relationship between the music and the artist and the fan. But I really like enjoying that the world is his oyster. If he wants to check out a band, it's not necessarily having to come up with the $25 for the vinyl record or the CD or whatever. He can test it out. He can listen to their streams, and he can start going to the band's websites and seeing their live podcasts or performances or whatever. And that opportunity is still there. I love watching him discover music. It's great.
What is he listening to right
everything
now?
And everything, anything that I listened to, he got from a meme. That's the only real difference, is he's triggered to the music by a meme he saw. The first conversation we had about that, he's going to hate me that
he probably won't listen.
Oh yeah, he will. But I think it was my favorite music moment with him.
Okay.
He turned on his phone and he was playing Roundabout by Yes, which I'm like, where the hell did you get this one? Oh, it was on a meme. Okay, great. And so then he started talking about how he was going to start doing memes and start using music samples. And I said, no. I said, you need to respect the artist and what they created. And if you're going to use that music, you have to understand. I mean, he got the full on DJ lecture from me. And it went on and on and on and on. And he goes, they'll never know. And I'm like, horse pucky, let's get in the car. Let's drive to Alan White. And you ask for permission to use roundabout. And he's like, what? I'm like, Alan White lives in the area. You never know where these guys are. So let's go to the horse's mouth and you tell him what you just told me. And that changed it all, where he has developed a love and a respect for the artist behind the music. And he also loves Monty Python more than life itself. So he's a cool kid.
You raised him right.
I did my best.
Good job. I'll wrap up with this question. Yep. What didn't I ask you that I should have?
Oh, when did you see Soundgarden for the first time? Sorry, that
was awesome. Because honestly, I'm going, I can't remember.
You can't remember.
I can't remember either.
What question?
Because we just condensed 30 plus years of music history into a little over an hour.
Right.
So we've skipped over a lot of stuff.
Oh, and so many different crazy moments.
Yeah.
I think you have the harder job where you can ask a question and I can come up with one or two stories to go with it. And so there's a lot of stories that you don't know that you wouldn't know to ask about. I can't think of a question so you can get that.
Okay.
I guess a hindsight question. Would you do anything differently?
Yeah. Okay. Cathy, would you do anything differently?
Not a bit. No.
There we go.
Maybe get rid of my big hair earlier, but no.
Now, I thought you would have said enunciate to Robert Plant.
No, because it's a good story, you know.
It's a great story.
Anytime I went on vacation, I said that I was going to go hang out with, Robert Plant in the Riviera, because in analog radio, you could do that. And the fact that I couldn't even talk to him, I thought was poetic justice and karma for that. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. So if people want to find out more about you, more about KISW, all of those things, where can they go?
Well, you can go to KISW.com for anything KISW, and they have an amazing Facebook page. For me, I do voiceovers now. I do have a lot of those pictures you referred to on my website, CathyFaulkner.com, and it's Cathy with a C. I'm alive and well. But yeah, welcome to check it out. And I've got a public Facebook page at Late Cathy Faulkner.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time. This was great for me. I had a lot of fun, and I appreciate you sharing just the tip of the iceberg.
It was great chatting with you and fun going down memory lane. Thanks for indulging me.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.